Hello, DeMatha Nation. My name is Connor Glowacki, current staff member here at DeMatha, and welcome to this week's DeMatha Zoom Hour, where we spotlight various alums and members of the school community. I'm joined today by fellow staff member Ben Flary, class of 2011, and DeMatha varsity football head coach Bill McGregor, who will be helping us conduct today's interview with longtime NFL official and class of 1986 DeMatha grad Greg Steed. Greg grew up in Northwest DC in Hyattsville, and he played football and ran track here at DeMatha. Graduated from Howard University and has also been an IT professional with 30 years of experience supporting federal agencies, including the Department of Defense, Housing and Urban Development, and Department of State. And in addition, Greg is also a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. Greg began his illustrious football officiating by working high school football games in the DC area and quickly moved up into the collegiate ranks. Greg officiated for 8 years in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, the A-10, and the Big East, as well as officiating in numerous bowl games. At the professional level, he officiated in the Arena Football League from 1997 to 2003, the XFL in 2000, and NFL Europe from 2001 to 2003. And just recently, he has completed his 18th season as an official in the NFL. Greg has had 18 postseason assignments, which includes several divisional and wildcard playoff games, 2 conference championships, and 4 Super Bowl assignments, including as the on-field back judge for Super Bowls 44 and 54. And in week 11 of this past NFL season, Greg made history being part of the first all-black officiating crew working an NFL game, the Monday night matchup between the LA Rams and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest today, Greg Steed. And Greg, thanks again for joining us. First of all, how are you doing? And how would you say this past NFL season in the middle of a global pandemic has gone for you and other sideline officials?
Thanks again, everybody, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with the DeMatha Stagnation. Regarding this season, just like everyone else, it was a change, dealing with the pandemic. And one thing I learned, not only from my days at DeMatha, but through the military, I see Lieutenant Colonel Clark is on, and we could tell you this, is being able to adjust and adapting to your environment. And that's one thing we had to do this season, is adapt to a new environment and new rules and procedures. Although it was challenging, one thing that we all know as athletes, you have to adapt and change and be resilient. And those character traits came out throughout the season, because there were a lot of people who didn't think we would make it through the first few weeks. And here we are heading to Super Bowl weekend. So with all the work from the medical personnel, all the support staff, the players and trainers, we made it. And, there's still a lot of work, of course, to be done, but we know if we put in the work, put in the effort, and work together, we can accomplish anything.
Thanks, Greg. My question to you, so I'm curious to what inspired you to get into officiating, specifically in football. And, has it been tough to balance with your information technology career?
Yes, that's a great question, I should say. How did I get into NFL officiating? Well, officiating as a whole. I mentioned this earlier, when I was playing football as a youth and even through DeMatha, one thing I never thought about was officiating. I used to look at the officials like they would get in the way. They would ruin the game for us. They wouldn't let us play. And I used to joke about it all the time with my fellow teammates. They make a call and we were like, what are you talking about? You don't know you just ruined this great play. And unfortunately, once I finished playing football at DeMatha, I didn't get an opportunity to play collegiately, and we can talk about that later. But once I came back from Desert Storm, I still had the itch to play, but I believe that train had moved past. And my cousin, who at the time was officiating, he had just started officiating high school football and was officiating he was officiating an adult flag team. He asked me, hey, why don't you come out and just work some games on Saturday, make a few extra bucks for gas. And it allows you an opportunity to stay in a sport that you love to play. And I did it. And fortunately, there were some other college officials out there watching the game. And they took notice of me and suggested that I do this. And I joined the high school board in Washington, D.C., and progressed from there. Now, I think, what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry, Ben.
Just has it, been tough for you to balance, officiating in the NFL, then balancing that with your information technology career? How does that work?
I've been very fortunate, having good management. When I started officiating on the high school level, I was at the time working as a stay-in school student and interning at the Department of Defense. And the SES at the time, he was a proponent of being involved in other curricular, other activities. You should have something that you're doing other than a 9 to 5. So when he found out that I was officiating, he really encouraged it and supported me. And from that point on, whenever I would interview for a job, I would let them know this is what I do, because it was something that was important to me. And if I wasn't able to do officiating, I probably wouldn't be happy on my day job. And I guess being honest in those interviews allowed them the opportunity to determine whether I would be a fit for the job. And I must say, 30 something years later, I haven't had a problem with any of my employers. Probably because I use all of my leave when I go to do football. So they didn't have a problem with that.
That's a fair answer, Greg. Coach McGregor, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Hey, Greg, how you doing? First off, I want to say thank you so much for being on the call. It's really great to see you. And we at DeMatha are so proud of you and everything you've accomplished. I mean, it's been absolutely an outstanding career, and it's absolutely been amazing what you've been able to do. Coach King put a big picture of you up in the weight room. And as I take recruits through DeMatha and through the weight room, I point out to the guys who play professional athletics, or guys who are up or guys who are up on the wall who are doing other things in professional athletics. And obviously, everybody wants to know about you as a football official, because that's kind of unique. And so my accolades go out to you, and I thank you so much, and just so proud of you. But my question is this. You've done this for a number of years, and you've encountered a lot of different head coaches. And is there a head coach or two out there that maybe you really don't want to hear from, or don't want to maybe see too much of, or maybe does extra badgering of the officials? I'm putting you on the spot right away.
Well, there are some coaches who will try you. And I must say, it's no different than on the youth, high school, collegiate level. Coaches, as you know, will try you to see what they can get away with. They all have different techniques. Some are more vociferous than others. Others use their assistant coaches. Now, there's one in particular. Everyone knows the coach in New England. And I will recall my very first game that I had with New England. And the visiting team controls the schedule for when the teams come out of the tunnel onto the field. And this particular team had New England come out extra early, and they were standing outside in the cold, and the New England coach was not happy about it. And this is my rookie year. And I'm standing next to him because I bring the visiting team out as the bat judge. And he looks at me and he said, Greg, what are you going to do about this? And I just looked at him. I said, Coach, I don't control the schedule. I think you need to take this up with somebody who has a higher pay grade than I do. And he just looked at me and said, well, how are you going to work this game if you can't take control of this right now? And I said, well, Coach, you don't have to worry about me working the game. You just need to worry about how you're going to coach this game. And to this day, he remembers that conversation and said I had a lot of nerve to tell him what he needs to be concerned about as a rookie.
I love it. Hey, Greg, what about some advice for maybe me as a high school coach? Is there a way to win over an official?
Well, Coach,
maybe get that big call when you need it.
I get that question all the time from people. Hey, how do you win over officials? And I always say, if you can win over officials, they should not be officiating, because we are here to maintain the integrity of the game. It is our job to make sure that we are officiating a fair game. And if we tend to lean towards one coach over the other, now we have caused questions on how, based on our character and what our integrity is. Now, to give you a little advice, just be straight up with the official. If you have a question, you should be able to ask that official a question. He should give you an answer. And if he can't answer that question for you right then and there, he should at least say, Coach, I will get back to you. Now, one thing an official should not take is disrespect, just as we should not be disrespectful to the coaching staff or the players. And I think as long as we have that banter of communication going back and forth, it serves the game well. And I believe that's when you have the best officiated and the best coached games, is when you have that open line of communication. And there are times in which I know we're wrong. It's the human element of the game. And I've thrown a flag when I wish I had a rope on it, I could bring it back. And the coach would say, Greg, you just blew that call. And I've learned the best thing I could do is own up to it. Say, yes, coach, I blew that call, but I'm gonna make sure I don't blow another one. And once you do that, you diffuse the situation. And I let him know, coach, you made bad calls, and he accepts that as well. So that's the best thing I can advise to coaches. Just be honest. Don't make your points when they are valid, and don't just bring up, situations that may have happened weeks ago, because every game is different. Every play is different.
Appreciate it, Greg. Thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
I'm looking for a call, Coach.
Exactly.
There's going to be a big Gonzaga game, big St. John's game where, you got to get that one call to maybe help you out a little bit, get that hold against them or a pass interference or something like that. I'm just looking,
and then when we see that call, then I won't be able to work the next week.
That's great. Well, at this point, we'd like to open up the floor to our audience. If you've joined us before, you know the deal, but for those who are joining us the first time, you can leave a question. Well, you can indicate to us in the chat sidebar that you have a question for Greg, and then Ben or I will call on you, and you can unmute yourself and ask Greg your question. Before that, we do have a question we see our very own athletic director, Ed King, is on the call. Ed, do you have a question for Greg?
Yeah. Hey, Greg. Hey, don't want to put you on the spot. What is your most gutsy call that you ever made?
Wow. I would say that most recently last year's Super Bowl, just before the first half, I called OPI, offensive pass interference, against San Francisco's tight end. And as you know, he completed the catch, and it was a big time play because that put them in field goal range just before the half, or in score position. And I think they would have received the ball in the second half. I forget exactly. But anyway, when I made that call, that took away, I think, like a 50 to 60 yard gain. And when you make a call like that, of course, you don't want to be wrong. As I'm walking off the field at halftime, one of my fellow officials looked at me and said, well, Greg, did you like the call? I said, well, I threw the call. And if the offense doesn't like it, it's too late now. There's nothing we can do about it. But I tell you, when we get in the locker room at halftime, most of us pull out our cell phones and check our text messages. And it was reassuring when I received messages from my peers saying, great call. That's what you look for, is, confirmation from your peers, because, they are going to keep it real. So that was a great question. And that's the most recent call that I can remember that I feel was a big call, and it was very impactful.
Hey, Greg, we got a question from Hugh Harris. Hugh, if you want to unmute your mic, and you can ask Greg your question.
Yes. Hey, Greg. First of all, I was over in Desert Storm with you,
What'd
you do in the Marine Corps? What type of work?
I was 3051 supply. So in Desert Storm, I was assigned to a DSG, a direct support group.
Okay.
We had an Army brigade, an Army Tiger brigade with us as well. And we went up through, as you know, landed in Kuwait. I'm sorry, landed in Saudi Arabia. Landed in Kuwait and went through Iraq from the through Kuwait, wow. I should say. I'm sorry.
It was 30 years ago, so it's a lot of details are hard to keep track of.
Well, so I got to remember the Army came through from the backside. We came up from the south.
Thanks again.
Greg, we have a question. John Farrell, class of 1978. John, if you want to unmute your mic and ask Greg your question. John,
you muted, John.
Yeah, John, you have to unmute your mic. If not, I can ask it. Yeah, I'll ask it. Okay. So John says he's class of 1978. He said that this is his 41st year of officiating college and high school football. He served 26 years in the Air Force, so he's moved every 3 years or so. The highest level that he's ever officiated was the Lone Star Conference in Texas, Division II. And his question is, what is your most interesting / funny story bantering with coaches? He says that he has many. I know you mentioned the New England one, but maybe if you had any other pop in your mind, Greg.
Wow, John, that's a great question. So many, as you say. I believe, and don't take this the wrong way, Coach McGregor, Mr. King, Mr. Messi, and all the other coaches on the call, but I believe coaches can be comedians. I think they really have a passion for comedy, because they seem to find a joke when they're really serious. So, John, I mean, there's so many stories out there. One that comes to mind, the former Atlanta coach, I forget his name, but
Dan Quinn, maybe?
No, before Quinn, his father actually, Jim Mora's son. Dan. So there was a game in which in Atlanta, he wanted me to call a foul for interfering with the opportunity for his punt return to catch the ball. Whereas, head coaches, a lot of time they listen to their assistant coaches. They don't necessarily see every play. So they get told from the assistant coaches that it was a foul, and they just recite it. So he's yelling at me, and I look at him and I say, I can't hear. That's the benefit of being a bad judge in the middle of the field. I can look over at him and then I can turn away. Well, unfortunately, I handle TV timeouts. And when I went over to the TV liaison during the next timeout, he comes down to me and he just starts, berating me. And I just looked at him and started smiling. I said, well, Coach, did you see the play? He started laughing and said, no, I didn't. I said, well, why are you fussing at me? He said, because normally you're wrong. So all I could do was laugh. And I mean, it was funny at the time, but he said some disrespectful things, and I called him out on it. But I would say a few days later, he sent me a handwritten card apologizing. And I thought that was very nice of him and very professional of him to acknowledge, look, sometimes we get emotional and get in the heat of the moment, but we also are men and we can be respectful. And I think that just was a testament to the type of banter we have as men in the game. And it can get personal sometimes, but it's really not, if you know what I mean.
Greg, we got a question from Joe Connolly. So go ahead, Joe, unmute your mic.
Thanks, Connor, and really appreciate you guys putting all these together. Greg, thanks for joining us. And Coach McGregor, it's been a long time. It's great to see you since that 82 team.
Joe, you're famous. You made the immaculate reception, first championship in a long time. Absolutely. Great to see you, Joe. Yeah.
Glory days. But Greg, again, thanks for joining us. We see so much hype around the Super Bowl, and I'm sure the players get caught up in that and they can use that adrenaline. How do you as an official remove yourself from that and keep a calm, cool head and be unbiased throughout there with everything that's going on around you?
Hey, Joe, that's a great question. And I get asked that a lot. It's just like anything else in life. You learn to block out the extraness, for lack of better words, that is going on. It is so much hype leading up to the Super Bowl, as you say, and you do get caught up in that excitement. But when it gets to game day, actually before game day, so we have meetings that we have to conduct prior to the game, pre-game meetings in which we are reviewing game film from both teams. We have test questions that we go over. So it's still a business from that standpoint. You have your fun throughout the week, but when it's to get closer to that game, you switch gears and you put on that work hat and get to work. And that's what we're able to do is, focus, switch gears. And once that ball is kicked, it's just another game. All the excitement pertaining to the hype, it goes out the window once that ball is kicked and the players come together and you see that first hit.
Thanks, Jeff. I think we got one from Philip Berger. Philip, if you want to unmute your mic and ask Greg your question.
Sure. Hey, Greg, Phil Berger, class of 96.
Hello, Phil.
Thanks for your service in Desert Storm. My dad was there. Hugh, thanks for your service. Donald, thanks for your service. Really appreciate that. But when you're talking with your like ref buddies and your officiating crews, like what are 1 or 2 rule changes you just wish, like, man, we really got to change this rule? I mean, there was a couple kind of crazy rules that were highlighted this postseason that just seem too putative or just didn't make a lot of sense. So are there like 1 or 2 rule changes you like to make if you could wave a magic wand?
Definitely. Close line play, the cut blocks at the line of scrimmage. I really don't see what's the purpose of those blocks. I mean, you're really going below the player's waist down in the knee area, right at the line of scrimmage, and they're legal. So that's a block that I believe if you wanted to talk about safety and looking at the player's longevity, that's a block that you will get out of the game, in my opinion. I would say one of the rule changes that has been difficult to officiate recently is the helmet, the use of the helmet. And what's challenging about that, and I brought this up many times that people don't really take a look at. If you look at back when we played football back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, the shoulder pads were much wider. Now the shoulder pads are more condensed. Well, when you have condensed the shoulder pads, the helmet sizes have not gotten smaller. So when the player's going to make a tackle, although they're trying to keep their head up, what's the first thing that's going to make contact a lot of times? Is that helmet. And I think that's a result of the equipment that we now use. That is a very difficult call to make, is that use of helmet, because those players have to make a decision to break up a pass, to tackle their opponent. And it happens so quickly, it's very difficult for us to see that in real time. Fans have the luxury of seeing a replay, slowing it down, and then they wonder, why didn't you get that? I tell you, we didn't get it because it happened just like that. And one thing we don't want to do is make a call that's incorrect, because it can cost a team so much. We are trained to call what we see, and if we don't see it, don't make the call. So that's a rule change that has benefited the game, because I believe I just read recently concussions have decreased for the 3rd consecutive year. And that's because they have focused on the players getting their head up and turning the head away when making contact. And that's a testament to the coaches as well, from the youth level all the way up to the professional level, ensuring that the players are playing with the proper technique.
Greg, we have a question from your fellow class of 86 alum, Mark Smith. Mark,
What's up, Mark?
Unmute your mic.
Hey, Greg, how you doing, man?
Good. How you doing, Mark?
Good. You're making the class of 86 proud. Hey, so from your, what did you take from your DeMatha experience with you that's helped you with officiating? I'm expecting something along the lines of character building and that kind of stuff. And then you hear a lot of comments from Morgan Wooten's old players. Is there anything that you got playing in the back of your head that you can hear Coach McGregor saying when you're officiating?
Oh, never give up. I remember that being told all the times. And not only never give up, but you have to work. One thing I learned at DeMatha, you have to earn your playing time. It wasn't given to you. I don't care who you were. And as you all know, if you made that team, you were a good athlete. But there was always somebody ready to take your spot. So you had to work hard. And I remember, Coach McGregor, Coach King. Coach King was running backs coach. So I spent a lot of time with Coach King. And they pushed us. And there were times in which I remember, for example, and he's probably, JB Brown was playing defensive back. We was in practice. And I was on the scout team, and I came across the middle, quarter pass, and JB lit me up. And I laid there. The wind knocked out of me. And what did they do? They made sure I was okay, but they moved their practice down to the other end. I learned, look, you got to be tough, and you have to put in the work. And that right there has transcended to where I am today. And it never stops. The learning never stops. Because there are officials who want my job right now. And I tell you, I help those officials. I learned that you must still train and mentor, and that makes me better. And that's one thing I learned at DeMatha, is being around other good athletes. It challenges you to compete and to be better.
Thank you, Greg. So I kind of want to ask you a question myself here, and then maybe we go to Coach McGregor if he's got another one. But Greg, so we mentioned, in the introduction that in November, you were part of the first ever all-black officiating crew in NFL history. And obviously the opportunity for this to happen took way too long. But just kind of wanted to get your thoughts and, what was going through your head when that happened. I think it was week 11, Tampa Bay and LA. Just kind of what went through your mind on that day.
Yes, good question, Ben. I was proud. Like you said, it was long overdue. There have been many Black African-American officials before me who paved the way. When Ben Toler, who became the first African-American official in the NFL, there are so many that are local to this area. For example, Johnny Greer, who was the first Black white hat in the NFL. He was actually one of my mentors who helped me get into the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference while he was still working on the field. A guy by the name of Lawrence Hill, whose son actually, the Honorable Lawrence Hill Jr., who's a judge in Prince George County in a 1984 DeMatha grad. His father was one of my main mentors who recommended me to the Arena Football League. So when I was assigned to that crew, it was people like Johnny Greer, Larry Hill, and all my other mentors who paved the way for me and taught me. They were going through my mind. I was doing this for them because this was an opportunity that they did not have afforded to them, unfortunately. So I felt a sense of pride, but more importantly, I felt, as with anything, once that first is out of the way, it should become a norm. We should not have to concern ourselves with how many Black officials, how many white officials. We're just officials, and that's how we always have looked at the game. And I think it's just, how our society must transcend and look at where we should be. But it was a great experience, and I'm glad that we were able to get out of the way. And I give you an example. Week 17, I believe, it was week 17, the Washington and Philly game. It was another all-Black crew, and there was nothing said about it. And I believe that's how it should be.
Absolutely. Coach McGregor?
Yeah, Greg. Yeah, I really like the one safety rule that you came up with in terms of cut blocking. Buck was our offensive line coach forever, and it's one of the things we never taught at DeMatha. Any type of cut block on the line of scrimmage, and we always felt the young men have to use their feet, use their technique, and avoid that. So I agree with you 100%. I think that's a really unsafe block that a number of teams will use on someone. And I really liked your comment on that. A number of years ago, I had a chance to participate a little bit in the Super Bowl and spent some time with Terry McCauley. He was actually the referee of that game. One of the things he talked about, maybe you can elaborate with some of the guys here, is this how tough the background check is to become an NFL official.
Yes, you mentioned Terry. Actually, Terry was my referee that year, the year that I worked my first Super Bowl.
Okay.
Regarding background checks, I tell you, being a DOD employee, I've been used to having background checks. The NFL's background checks is it's not as extensive, I would say, as obtaining a clearance. However, what they focus on is convictions, and they look at your credit. Those are the things that are most important, because if you had credit issues, then you may be susceptible to bribes. We saw what happened with the NBA officials some years ago, and that brought a lot of attention on how officials can be targeted, that is. So when it comes to the background investigation, we get investigated or reinvestigated every 2 years now, in which they have hired, each team has security reps assigned to them, at least 2 security reps. These security reps are former local FBI or police officers who have retired, but now they work for the National Football League, and they do an extensive background check. They go to the courthouses to make sure that, like I said, you don't have any convictions on record, and that you're living upstanding life. And that's what's important, because again, if our integrity as officials or our character is questioned, then we're going to be questioning on officiating that game.
Yeah. Sitting with Terry that Friday before the Super Bowl, and like one of the things he talked about is how extensive the background security was, and even if somebody made a really stupid mistake at the age of 18, that could actually prevent him from being an NFL official someday. And that's one of the things I talk to the kids about all the time is making good choices, and you never know how that choice you make can impact you the rest of your life.
Coach, you're exactly correct. And when I've come to speak at career nights at school, career day at schools, that's exactly one of the things that I mentioned to them is the decisions that you make as a youth can impact your career as an adult. And it's very important to make sure that you are making good decisions and that you don't come in contact with the law in the wrong way.
Greg, thanks for the answer. We got a question here from Lieutenant Colonel Donald Clark. Donald, if you want to unmute your mic and ask Greg your question.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Greg if he ever takes any of that stuff home with him, or once he leaves the field, if it's all out of his mind.
Great question, sir, and I appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Do I take my work from the field home with me? Yes and no. I think once, as we know, your career becomes your life, but you have to have balance. And one thing that I did learn early on is that it's best to leave work at work. And when I come home, I spend that time with my family and not allow work to take over what we do as a family. Now, that doesn't mean my officiating is not part of who we are, but I do my best in balancing and not to take away from the time with my kids, going to their sporting events, participating in their activities, in which football is not a part of that. And that really helps out a lot with the balance in life. That's a great question though, because I know a lot of officials, a lot of people in particular, they can spend too much time on one thing, and then now you're taking away from your other aspect of life and quality of life.
Thank you, Donald. Thank you, Greg. Coach King, I think we got another one from Coach King.
Okay, Greg, I'm gonna definitely put you on a spot. I mean, there's a lot
What's
of things
new?
that happened to DeMatha, and I'm gonna, do you recall any interesting conversations that came out of film sessions with Buck that may have helped you later on in life?
Ooh, now you're going back a long time ago, but especially with Dr. Offit, I mean, everything was interesting, whether it be in the film sessions or in his class. Wow, you are putting me on the spot. There's so many. I mean, I just remember everything that comes out of what I learned at DeMatha was work hard and focus and study. I mean, and have fun doing it. We had fun working hard. Even when we had to, I remember Dr. Offit, one thing he did do is get on the football players a little more. He probably pushed us a little more than others because he knew what we had to do. But if we didn't do well on a quiz, a pop quiz, we paid for it in practice. I do remember that. And he didn't say it. He just would give you that growling look with his pipe and nod his head. And I knew that wasn't a good sign. But I can't recall any one particular thing that he would say. It was just, I remember that growl and that pipe.
I appreciate it, Greg. Thank you.
Now,
Greg,
Greg. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Connor.
Greg, I guess, Greg, sticking with your DeMatha experience, how would you describe that experience overall, your 4 years on the campus? What were some of your favorite teachers, classes? Obviously, you were involved with football and track.
Yeah, up and down is, we always like to talk about the good times. High school, I mean, regardless of where you are, it's not always fun. I remember there were times in which I did not want to go to practice. it was raining outside. I didn't want to practice in the gym, and we was hoping that practice would be canceled, and coach would say, no, we're going to the gym. Make sure you have your tennis shoes. And I didn't want to do it. But once you get there and once you get around your peers, you forget about that. And I think that helped out a lot. Regarding teachers, I will always remember taking algebra with Mr. Smith and filling those bushes because somebody may have gone out the window because they did something they weren't supposed to do. You can't do that nowadays, but those were the good old days. Mr. Messier, I was taking driver's ed with Mr. Messier, and I think I was a few minutes late, and he put me out. I'm like, how you gonna put me out? I run track for you. They didn't care. You have to show up on time, and you have to be prepared. And those type of things I took away from DeMatha, and it helps me today because if you're late, and Colonel Clark and all the other military personnel would tell you, being on time can be life or death. Being a second late can cost someone's life. So when you think about those, characteristics, those lessons you learn at DeMatha, it transcends to adulthood. And I'm appreciative of all those lessons from all my teachers and coaches at DeMatha. Everyone had an impact on me and challenged me to work. I remember, I remember my senior year, we was, and Coach McGregor and Coach King may remember this, but we were scrimmaging. And I remember this like it was yesterday. We had a scrimmage at Oak Hill, I believe it was. And myself, Tyrone Jackson, and John Jeffries, we were considered 3-back attack. And I remember Coach McGregor saying after that particular scrimmage, wow, I got 3 running backs. And we shared the load and we challenged each other. And I think that made us a good team because of that. It wasn't no I.
Now, Greg, a couple more questions here. We'll let you go. But throughout your NFL officiating career, has there been a specific game or maybe a player that you distinctly remember that left an impression on you? Like, do you ever? I don't know if you're able to answer this, but like, do you ever, get kind of what's the term I'm looking for? Like starstruck, I guess. Have you ever gotten starstruck with maybe a player or I don't know, specific, or is there maybe a player or specific game that kind of sticks out to you?
Y'all gonna laugh at this, but we have so many great athletes that have come out of DeMatha. It's hard to get starstruck because we have so many of those already. But one player that left an impression on me is the late Sean Taylor, and I tell you why I say he left an impression on me. I was fortunate to officiate his games when he was playing at University of Miami. Well, there was a particular training camp. I was working Washington training camp. And of course, because of my position, I work a lot with the defensive backs and receivers. But I was talking with one of my officials and we were looking at formations and he paid attention to that. And he came over to me and inquired, okay, what are you doing? I explained to him, I'm looking at what the set is and how the receiver's coming off the line of scrimmage. And he said, wow, you're doing the same thing that I'm doing. And at the end of practice, I ran reps with them. After practice, something I like to do is just run the wind sprints with them. And one of the players was complaining about the reps. And he looked at me and said, look, don't count the reps, make the reps count. And that's pretty much how he played every play. And that left an impression on me that, first of all, he took the time to come over to see what I was doing. And the reason he did that, and I tell players this all the time, talk to the officials, find out how they are going to officiate the game, because then you know what you can and cannot do. And that's what he was doing. He was learning what I was looking at so that he would know what he can get away with, so to speak. That left an impression on me. And regarding a game that left an impression, there were 2 games. The very first game of my career, in which 18 years ago I worked, it might have been the first or second year that the NFL brought in Thursday night football, and it was the Jets versus Washington. So I was able to work my first regular season game here in Washington. And, that was very exciting for me because it gave my family an opportunity to see what all the hard work has paid off for. And then my first Super Bowl in Miami. And one thing I remember about that game is not only was my first Super Bowl and all the excitement, but we had a major snowstorm here in the Washington, D.C. area that year. And I got to be in Florida in the sun while everybody was snowed in with about 18 inches of snow.
That's great. Greg, we got another question from John Farrell. John, feel free to unmute your mic.
I think John's mic's messed up. That's
All right.
what it was.
So I'll read the question over here, Greg, to you. So, recently, especially in the NFL, there's been a lot more, female reps entering the game. John's wondering, has that been any adjustment in terms of the players? Has that been any adjustment, or is that just a, smooth, regular transition that's happened?
I believe, we know football has been a male-dominated sport. So naturally there was an adjustment period. Having a female out on the field, we know that there's language that goes on out there that we have to be cognizant of. But I must say that the females that I know that are in the development program, Sarah, who will be working the Super Bowl this weekend, who will be the first, female to work the Super Bowl. And she's a good official. And one thing that she did not do, and she does not do, is she doesn't want preferential treatment. She wants to blend in. And as with anyone, once you work the game and they see that you're competent, everything else goes out the door. And they look at her as an official. And I see that. And I think that's great. And there will be other female officials that will have their opportunity, I believe, in the future. There will be in the NFL. And it will be we won't be discussing anymore. We look at what Tampa Bay has done with their coaching staff, having, I believe, 2 females on their staff. Washington has a staff. So there are more women now involved in the sport. So it's helped with it not being a focus.
Greg, last question here. It's actually, well, 2-part. So Mark Smith had a comment asked if referees are allowed to have a favorite team. That was his question. And then I got one more question for you after that.
Yes, Mark. Everybody, we grew up, if you're a football fan, as a child, you always had a favorite team. That doesn't change once you become an official. And I get asked that question all the time. And yes, I have a favorite team, and I've worked that team many times, and I've thrown flags against that team many times, because we get graded on every play of every game. And that's what we are measured by. And this is a very competitive industry, and it's based on your performance. And just as quickly as I throw that flag and I'm wrong, I can be removed from the staff just that quickly. So there's no favoritism at all. And I must say, I remember the first time I worked my favorite team, when that flag came out, because some of the players knew that I liked them as a team, and they were like, wait a minute, I thought we were your team. I said, yeah, you are my team, but this is my job. And it was fun and jokes after that.
That's great. And I just, in your opinion, what do you think makes DeMatha, so unique, and how does it stand out from all the other high schools in the country, in your opinion, Greg?
It's one thing I will say, DeMatha has national name recognition. And I'm proud when I say I played and I graduated from DeMatha High School. And then they say, oh, that basketball school. I say, oh, no. It's not just that basketball school. We have a strong and long football tradition. And once I start naming all of the players football players that have played in the league, and their eyes just get big, wow, you're right. It just makes you proud. Last year, I was on the same flight to Miami with James Brown. And we talked about the tradition. And he was a basketball player, and he talked about the football tradition. So, and people just to hear, that dialogue, it's just amazing. Like I said, the recognition and the type of men that DeMatha has produced over the decades. And it just continues. So that's a testament, again, to the staff at DeMatha, the current staff and the past staff.
Well, Greg, thanks again for joining us. It's been great listening to your stories, working the NFL and outside the NFL. It gets us all excited for the Super Bowl this weekend. So thanks for joining us. Before we go, I want to toss it back over to Ben for a message from our advancement office.
Yeah, so Greg, just, on behalf of me and all at DeMatha, again, just want to reiterate, thank you so much for joining us. I don't think officials get enough credit a lot of the time. And, without officials, the games can't be played. So just thank you for everything, you've done for the game and also for your service. And us as DeMatha Stags, we're super proud of you. And we love to see you out there. Just kind of on my end, kind of my advancement office, plug here. We'd like to ask for your support for the fund for DeMatha, which went out in the mail in October. It's critical to the school in support of our ongoing mission of educating faith-filled gentlemen and scholars. You can give online at www.dematha.org or by mail. So with that, we'll conclude our afternoon. Thank you to everyone for your questions as well. Great questions. And Greg Steed, thank you so much again for joining us. That was a real pleasure.
Thanks for having me, and I enjoyed. And I hope I was able to answer everybody's questions.
You were terrific. Thanks,
Cool.
Greg.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Greg. Appreciate it. Great seeing you.
You too.